The views or opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Westman Communications Group or its employees.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the KC Chronicles podcast.
I think at some point when we introduce ourselves, we should just together say KC Chronicles podcast. I think that'd be epic.
That would be so bad because then we have to try and time it correctly, and if we don't, we're gonna look
I could
silly.
just match to your words.
We're gonna look very silly if we try that.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I just was thinking about that as you did that.
We just continued our conversation that we had before we started the program. Anyway. Welcome to another episode. What up? Welcome back to another episode. This is the first episode. We're in a hilarious mood today. Today is the day of the U.S. election, so I think everyone's emotions.
Everyone's in a different feeling.
Everyone's manic or depressed or some form of that, or stressed. I think it's
yeah.
fair.
We'll have updates on the next podcast about how the U.S. election goes and how we feel about it. Maybe that'll be the next one. Just a next podcast, make a real quick one about just the election, because by the time we're done, or we film another one, it'll be after the election is done.
This is true. After the results.
So maybe we can just sit down, have a debrief about it.
Yeah.
That might have to happen.
Absolutely. So we have a very jam-packed episode, but some housekeeping items quickly. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm too.
We're just here.
We're just here. But
it's been a rough one.
Yeah.
A little bit lately.
It's been busy, but the more important news, this coming Saturday, at the time we are taping, the Canadian Football League West Final is being played between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Saskatchewan. Yeah,
so Saskatchewan
I am so proud.
Won on Saturday. I watched the game, and it was very disappointing because I wanted BC to win.
I am honestly so proud of Sask. Like, this is going to be good. We usually never even make it to the playoffs, so we're doing
the last 2 years was hilarious.
Doing way better than we always do. I will be so proud of us if we get to the Grey Cup, but honestly, at this point, West Final being between us, I think is pretty good for.
And I'm going to the game in Winnipeg, so I think next episode, depending on like how the game goes, is probably going to be
friends.
We might not be friends. Our friendship actually might break if Saskatchewan wins.
I would never, ever. Oh, you would. He would stop being friends with me.
I would sever
If Winnipeg won, I would never stop being friends with him because our friendship is more important than football, but not to him, apparently. So, guys, guess what? I'm not more important than football.
Okay.
This is my resignation from KC Chronicles.
Everything she said is only half true. Anyway, that's some quick housekeeping items, but we wanted to get right into the topic today because
it's a spooky one, even though we kind of just did a bunch of spooky stuff for Halloween.
We just passed Halloween. It's November now. However,
I'm going to make a statement right now about November. We are not starting anything Christmas until after Remembrance Day out of respect. I just think that's a housekeeping rule that everybody should keep, but you will not see any Christmas content from us until after Remembrance Day, for sure. I think that's a good respect thing, here in Canada at least.
Okay.
I just that's in my household.
You just dropped the truth bomb. Right
in
on
my
us.
household, we were never allowed to decorate until after Remembrance Day out of respect. So I think all Christmas needs to wait until after Remembrance Day. It's only a week away, not even.
I was saying we have 6 days. So
till Remembrance Day.
6 days
of no Christmas. Okay.
And then
can we just please
Christmas.
Keep it that way?
And then we will get Christmas started.
And then we'll pepper a little pepper.
I said pepper, but then you make the motion for salt.
We will salt a little Christmas. We won't do all Christmas content, but maybe we'll add a little festive content.
We are going to
before
have
December hits.
A lot of Christmas content. We've been brainstorming, but anyway, we have waffled enough.
Anyway,
today's topic is kind of one giant overarching episode where we're going to talk about conspiracy theories, urban legends, and unexplained mysteries.
Because we like spooky things and we're scary people.
We're scary people.
Well, I mean,
You're pretty scary. I don't know.
To start, I'm going to ask you, when did you get into conspiracy theories? Like, when was your first introduction to it? What made you start watching them or reading them or anything like that?
Well, I got a book. Actually, I wish I would have brought it. It was like a picture book.
Sorry.
I wish I would have brought. I had a picture book when I was like preteen-ish that helped get me into it, but also unsupervised access to YouTube and the internet. you eventually just make your way to it. It's unavoidable.
Yeah, I'll say
because it's so embedded in society.
Yeah.
Both in innocent, not innocent ways.
I'll say my introduction to conspiracy theories was YouTuber Shane Dawson. He was major for that back when we were kids.
Yeah, it's a very well, I guess millennial as well, but a very Gen Z prominent YouTube channel. So
yeah, so
him too. But I got into it before Shane Dawson. So.
Yeah, no, that was probably the first I started hearing of them. But then I got really into them after that.
Yeah.
So
basically, both of us have a bunch of notes. As you can see, whenever the laptop comes out, this is like
I'm
serious
not that crazy,
business.
guys. I have my phone notes app.
I brought the whole.
He's insane. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not sorry.
Well,
you know
maybe after this episode, you might think we are insane because we are very fascinated. That's a proper word to say.
I'm gonna ask you a question. How many of your things do you believe? Because I don't know how many you have, but how much of it do you actually believe?
It's a very case-by-case basis, but I think...
Independent
of what I have written down here, just in general, less than a quarter of it, I would think is plausible. Over 3/4 of it, I think it's complete BS. But it's fun to read about because it gets the brain moving.
Yeah, conspiracy theories are so hit and miss. They've gone a little crazy. But there are some out there that are really believable. Like my first one, I think is very believable.
And again, it's just, and that word I just used, it's fascinating. It fascinates because humans, I think, we're so drawn to the unknown, to things that we don't know, and we're always trying to search for the answers.
And so we just end up making them up, or...
Well, yeah, and so to try and fill these voids when the answer is not abundantly clear to us, especially in situations where we're going to talk about that today, situations where things are like in distress, things are not going well. We need the answers to it, and that's why we come up with conspiracy theories.
Can I start with my first one then?
We're going to start.
Okay, I'm going to talk about my first one, which is the Mandela effect. And this one, to me, is actually quite believable when you really, really think about it. So for a little bit of background, the Mandela effect is a group of people misremembering historical events, people, anything, misremembering it, essentially. The origins come from people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, but he didn't.
No.
He died in 2013.
Yeah.
And didn't die in prison. But a lot of people remember him dying in prison in 1980 in South Africa. And I actually remember hearing that in my history class.
That's unique because you can clearly go online and look at footage of when he was freed from prison and became the Prime Minister or the President of South Africa. So,
yeah, but there are so many people who remember him dying in prison in 1980. In the 1980s.
Well, I wasn't around in the 1980s.
That's where the name Mandela comes from. So here are some examples of the Mandela effect, and then I'll explain why I think it's so believable. Number one, the Star Wars line. A lot of people remember it as, Luke, I am your father. It's not Luke, I am your father. It's, no, I'm your father.
No. Oh, sorry, that was a bad reference.
And go watch the movie. If you don't believe me, go watch the movie. But a lot of people remember Luke, I am your father. To be honest, I always thought it was Luke, I am your father. But I also don't watch Star Wars. So.
Look, Dad, I'm Darth Vader. No, you are not. I am your father.
The second example that I have is the Berenstain Bears.
How
do you remember it spelled? Berenstain.
Well, I was very young when I watched that, so I don't even know how it was supposed to be spelled.
It's Berenstain Bears, not Berenstein. So the
I always said it as Berenstain Bears.
Yeah, Berenstain Bears, whatever. Everybody remembers it spelled as Brerenstein.
Okay.
The real spelling is Stan, like stain at the end, like a stain.
Dun, dun, dun. Do you have your tinfoil hat out yet?
This one, even my brothers remember it as Berenstain Bears. My older brothers remember it as Berenstain Bears, not Berenstain.
But it's not.
But all the books and all the shows have Berenstain on them.
Huh.
And the last main example that I have is the Monopoly Man. I've talked about this one a lot. I talked about this with my dad. The Monopoly Man has a monocle. Except he doesn't. He doesn't have a monocle. And I always thought he did. Like, everybody does costumes of the English. This is a lot of words. Everybody does costumes of the Monopoly Man with a monocle. But any of the games, any pictures you look at, he doesn't have a
I guess
monocle.
he doesn't.
If you look it up, he doesn't.
I think people just associate that because he's he's like a rich guy dressed in rich clothes with a big Victorian era top hat. So maybe
but I remember him having a monocle. Like when I was a kid, I remember him having a monocle. So,
see, I always find the Mandela effect kind of tricky because a lot of these things I don't think about because I really don't care.
Yeah.
So not to discredit or belittle, but it's like I don't really think about that. Like, but was it Luke, I am your father? Was he wearing a monocle?
But the theory is, if you remember how the world was supposed to end in 2012, right?
That's fun.
Well, there's a theory that the world's supposed to end in 2012. But instead of the world ending, we were thrust into a parallel universe that is almost identical, but has very minor changes.
See, this is where we get into the 3/4 where I'm just thinking, like, who comes up with this? Who sits down and thinks, we're in parallel right now?
But it's like, a lot of people think we're in a parallel universe that's almost identical to the one we used to be in, but there's minor changes that make you question it, such as the Monopoly Man.
You know what?
But they can't make any major changes. Like, there can't be any major changes. Otherwise, we would know for sure that we're in a parallel universe, right? Why are you looking at me like that?
Do you want to know what the parallel change is? So if the world did end in 2012, and right now we are living in a world where it's slightly altered, that means on the original timeline, I'm sitting on that side and you're sitting on this side.
Wow, guys.
What? And you have the laptop.
He's so discrediting me right now. No, but like, I don't know. If you think about it, I think it could be not necessarily in a parallel universe, but I think things have changed and they just don't want to admit they've changed. So they want to make you feel like you're going crazy.
But life always evolves and changes.
Yeah, but I feel like people will say it's never changed or like, this is going a little, I don't know. I think that maybe even, this sounds weird, but maybe even it's a tactic to make people think they're crazy.
See, I think
you know what I mean?
I think this is sometimes when people think too much.
Rude. No, but
that's not against you. I'm just saying the people who come up with this stuff.
No, I think that like there is things that I remember a certain way that they're not that way. So it just kind of freaks me out when I think about it because I'm like, why is it not like that? So like, I don't know. That's what the part that's believable to me is that it's just not what it was. Like some things have changed, but people don't acknowledge that it's changed. Like there's no evidence out there that it's actually changed, you know? So either that's people like took away the evidence so you think you're crazy or I don't know.
That's
anyway, you can go into your first one. What do you think about the Mandela effect? You tell me.
You can email us at WCGTV@westmancom.com.
Or
DM you can follow us. You can DM us on Instagram. That's KC_Chronicles 2024.
We are a public account.
We're a public account. Send us a DM. Send us some love or some hate, whatever you're feeling.
Anyway. After that plug.
Okay, so this one's going to be more of a narration, and this is almost sort of more of an unexplained mystery.
Okay.
I'm going to be talking about the disappearance of D.B. Cooper.
Is it a person or is it?
Yes.
Okay. No, I've never heard this.
Okay.
Look at this. He's teaching me something for once. Sorry, guys.
Listen closely.
You sound like a storyteller. Gather around, kids.
Gather around,
come
listen. Okay.
Imagine people just like gathering around their TVs listening to us right now.
Well, that's good. Well, that's not good because you're not supposed to sit close to the TV. Anyway. Okay. D.B. Cooper, also known as Dan Cooper, was an unidentified man who hijacked Northwest Airlines Flight 305 in the United States airspace on November 24th, 1971.
I have never heard of this.
During the flight from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, Cooper told a flight attendant he had a bomb. He demanded $200,000 in ransom money, which is equivalent to approximately $1.5 million today. He also requested 4 parachutes upon landing in Seattle. After releasing the passengers in Seattle, Cooper opened the aircraft's aft door, deployed the staircase, and parachuted into the night over southwestern Washington. Now, I should give a brief detail here. He wanted to fly to Mexico City, and basically, after he released the passengers, the captain and the crew, they agreed, we're going to go from Seattle, we're going to refill in, I think it was Reno, Nevada, and then go right to Mexico City. And shortly after the flight took off over southern Washington, almost in the port, like kind of almost over near Portland, Oregon, he parachuted into the night. And Cooper's true identity and whereabouts has not been determined conclusively.
That is weird.
So imagine that.
Bro just parachuted away.
So
This is like, bye.
So in 1971, a man gets on a plane, claims his name is Dan Cooper, tells a flight attendant he has a bomb, demands $200,000 in ransom money, wants 4 parachutes, and wants to fly promptly to Mexico City, all in short order. And then
just parachutes away.
And then
just peace.
Opens the aft door, like where the stairs go down, and then just gone.
Bro just said peace.
In the middle, because this was like late in the evening, on a stormy night too.
That's weird. Bro just said peace. He's like, I'm out. They're not gonna give me what I want. They're just gonna put me in jail. Bye.
And this guy has never been found. So
he's probably in a lake somewhere.
So here's some. So here's the thing. After the incident happened, because this was $200,000 in bills, since this was the early 70s, they immediately started running ads and campaigns saying, listen, here's the serial numbers of the dollar bills that, was given to Cooper, okay? Pay attention and check the serial numbers on your dollar bills so we can see where he is spending this money, right? No money was ever found until... in 1980, a small portion of the ransom money was found along the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. The discovery of the money renewed public interest in the mystery, but yielded no additional information about Cooper's identity or fate, and the remaining money was never recovered.
Okay, I have one theory about what happened to him. What if he ended up in the river? Some of the money fell out.
It was discovered buried in the sand on the beach.
Yeah, but if it fell out, animals... How many years after was it found?
This was 9 years afterwards.
You never know, because animals could have taken it out of the water. There's so many ways it could have ended up in the sand, buried. So just keep that in mind. There's so many ways. But if he did end up in this water, it was a river?
Yeah, it washed up. Yeah, so it was a river that washed up on a beach, but it was buried. And a child who was playing on the beach dug it up and found it.
See, I wonder...
And it was in a briefcase, and the money was not damaged.
That's weird. But I think that maybe he just, in the water, he either drowned or got killed by animals. That's the most logical response.
Well, I will continue the reading.
Oh, there's more.
For 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI maintained an active investigation and built an extensive case file, but ultimately did not reach any definitive conclusions. The crime remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation. The FBI speculates Cooper did not survive his jump for several reasons. The inclement weather, Cooper's lack of proper skydiving equipment, the forested terrain into which he jumped, his lack of detailed knowledge of his landing area, and the disappearance of the remaining ransom money, suggesting it was never spent.
I don't think he survived. There's almost no way with the way he's jumped. There's no way he survived. And if he landed in the river, easily could have drowned, and a lot of sharks would have eaten him. Or if he had landed in a forest, broken bones, wouldn't have lasted very long, and some animals probably came and ate him. Let's be real.
But they have not found a body or a parachute. That's
well, if he was eaten...
Maybe a wolf dragged him away, but whatever.
I was going to say, if he was eaten, there's going to be no body found.
But what about the parachute? They would have found a parachute at some point.
Anyway, that's so confusing. You're just confusing me.
In July 2016, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case, although reporters, enthusiasts, professional investigators, and amateur sleuths continue to pursue numerous theories for Cooper's identity, success, and fate. Cooper's hijacking and several imitators during the next year immediately prompted major upgrades to security measures for airports and commercial aviation.
As they would.
Metal detectors were installed at airports, baggage inspection became mandatory, and passengers who paid cash for tickets on the day of the departure were selected for additional scrutiny.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Boeing 727s were retrofitted with eponymous Cooper vanes designed to prevent the aft staircase from being lowered mid-flight. By 1973, 2 years after, aircraft hijacking incidents had decreased as the new security measurements dissuaded would-be hijackers whose only motive was money.
Yeah. At least they did something about it.
But here's the thing. When I said earlier that they had built an extensive case file, there's no shortage of suspects. And I'm going to read to you a couple supposed suspects. We're going to start with a man named Ted.
How long is this? Because we don't have a whole lot of time.
I'll read this quickly. Ted Brayden. Theodore Burdett Brayden Jr. was a Special Forces commando during the Vietnam War. He was a master skydiver and a convicted felon. He was believed by many within the Special Forces community, both at the time of the hijacking and during subsequent years, to have been Cooper. Born in Ohio, Brayden first joined the military at the age of 16 in 1944. He eventually became one of the military's best parachutists, often representing the Army in international skydiving tournaments. And his military record lists him as making 911 jumps.
I have one question. Did they ever interview anybody, like any flight attendants? Like the flight attendant, he told he had a bomb.
Well, yeah, and they gathered several. They just scoured the flight for for evidence.
Okay, but why?
And they made a sketch of the description that the flight attendants gave.
How have they not found him or found anybody who looks like him or found any information on him if they know what he looks like? Like, that's my question. If they have a sketch of him, why?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Anyway, you can continue with your list of suspects.
So, I will quickly wrap up Ted Brayden. But during the 1960s, Brayden was a team leader within the Military Assistance Command in Vietnam. In December 1966, Brayden deserted his unit in Vietnam and made his way to the Congo to serve as a mercenary, but only served there for a brief time before being arrested by CIA agents and taken back to the United States for a court-martial.
So is there anybody who went missing after? Like, if any of their suspects or any other suspects missing and never been found?
I don't know. I don't know about that one, but here, I'll move on to the second suspect here. Lynn Doyle, or L.D. Cooper, was a leather worker and a Korean War veteran, was proposed as a suspect in July 2011 by his niece, Marla Cooper. As an 8-year-old, she recalled Cooper and another uncle planning something very mischievous, involving the use of expensive walkie-talkies at her grandmother's house in Sisters, Oregon. The next day, Flight 305 was hijacked. And though the uncles ostensibly were turkey hunting, L.D. Cooper came home wearing a bloody shirt. The result, he said, was an auto accident.
That's a little weird.
That's weird. Later, Marla claimed her parents came to believe that LD was the hijacker. She also recalled that her uncle, who died in 1999, was obsessed with the Canadian comic book hero Dan Cooper.
Ew.
And had one of his comic books thumbtacked to the wall.
Icky. Icky. Ooh,
Icky.
That's my prime suspect.
Last one, Richard McCoy Jr. Richard McCoy was an Army veteran who served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, first as a demolition expert and later with the Green Berets as a helicopter pilot. On April 7th, 1972, McCoy staged the best known of the copycat hijackings. He boarded United Airlines Flight 855 in Denver, Colorado, and brandishing what later proved to be a paperweight resembling a hand grenade and an unloaded pistol, he demanded 4 parachutes and $500,000.
Oh.
After delivery of the money and the parachutes at San Francisco International Airport, McCoy ordered the aircraft back into the sky and bailed out over Provo, Utah, leaving behind his handwritten hijacking instructions and his fingerprints on a magazine he had been reading. He was arrested on April 9th with the ransom cash in his possession and, after trial and conviction, received a 45-year sentence. 2 years later, he escaped from Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary with several accomplices by crashing a garbage truck through the main gate. Tracked down 3 months later in Virginia Beach, McCoy was killed in a shootout with FBI agents.
Okay. Couple things. Why 4 parachutes? Like, what is the point of 4 parachutes, man?
Well, they suspected in the original Dan Cooper case that he would be taking a, taking a hostage.
Okay.
Not convinced.
All right. The other thing I can think of is you said the money was buried, right? That they found for the Dan Cooper case. What if, say he survived, and he hid it there to make it seem like he died? so that the scent would be off of him, and they think, oh, he never survived.
And
Here's
again,
some of the
that
money.
was the ransom money. The ransom money was found there.
So I wonder if he sacrificed some of it and left it there for people to find, in a place for people to find, so they think he died.
It's one of those too many questions and not enough answers. But
okay.
So those were the three suspects. I had more notes on them, but I tried to kind of give you some bullet points just to kind of. But again, there was one theme amongst them. They were either copycats of hijackers, or they had served time in the military and had extensive skydiving knowledge. And I don't have any pictures of the three of them, but if you look at the three pictures compared to the sketch that was officially drawn as of Dan Cooper, described by the airline,
The flight attendant?
Yeah. All three of them look like the picture, but all of them are completely different people.
That's weird.
It's weird. But anyway.
Clones. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Clones. Cloning.
Cloning.
So I think this next one.
We're going to get into.
This next one is a joint one that we both
joint.
had written down, and we're both going to kind of dedicate a giant chunk.
So I will intro it.
And this is a very recent one.
In the category of flights, let's talk about the Malaysia 370 disappearance.
You might remember this one. This is 10 years ago now.
Little bit of background. It disappeared on March 8th in 2014. There was 227 passengers, 12 crew. It went missing right in the Bermuda Triangle area. That's where it was when it went missing, or when it lost radar signal.
It was over Malaysia. The Bermuda Triangle is in the Bahamas.
No. No, because every time I've read anything about it, it disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle area. Like, it lost radio signal right there.
The Bermuda Triangle is in the Caribbean.
I am not lying to you. That is what the research
The Bermuda Triangle is in the Caribbean. Malaysia is on the opposite side of the world.
Okay, but that's where it's a Malaysian flight, but it went missing in the Bermuda Triangle, did it not?
It was going from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing.
So I've been fed lies my entire life?
I don't know. Maybe you have.
It's said that it went missing over the Bermuda Triangle. I've been told that multiple times by multiple people. I need to watch the documentary on it.
Perhaps you've been lied to, or maybe there's a second less popular Bermuda Triangle. But so look here. So I'm showing her a picture of the flight path. So that's Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, I know.
They went there. So okay. Now we're gonna look at a flight of Southeast Asia.
Okay, but it's so weird because I've always been told that they lost signal over the Bermuda Triangle.
I don't know.
And that's where people think it went missing.
That's Southeast Asia. So the
Anyway.
The Bermuda Triangle's way over here.
Stop making me feel stupid.
Sorry, I'm not trying to make you feel stupid.
Told.
Anyways, let's move on.
Anyway, it was believed to be overtaken by aliens, time travelers, or beings from another dimension. That's quite literally just what I read about. The last contract with air control was at 1:19 a.m. and I actually heard they have a box recording in the dash, or like in the front part of the plane.
It was the final moments of the captain talking to air traffic control.
And he was stuttering a lot.
Well, and he also giving him maybe the benefit of the doubt since it was the middle of the night, but there were, when the air traffic control and the captain are communicating, there's supposed to be there's code words you have to keep saying, usually the flight number before you start talking. The last couple of things that he had said, he had tripped on his words and said incorrect words.
Like, it was just like he was stuttering a lot. Like, it was like he sounded nervous.
Perhaps.
And then they never stopped searching until 2 years and 10 months after the initial disappearance. There were pieces of the plane found on the shore, like small pieces of the plane, that was identified to be from that flight. From
Africa, Madagascar, Sri Lanka.
But they've never found the full aircraft.
I have some additional info here if
I'm just trying to explain, like, over 200 people went missing.
227 passengers and 12 crew.
How in the world does a plane with that many people just vanish? That's what bothers me about this.
Well, here's some notes that I have. The search for the missing aircraft became the most expensive search in the history of aviation. It focused initially on the South China Sea and Andaman Sea, before the novel analysis of the aircraft's automated communications with an Inmarsat satellite indicated that the plane had traveled far southward
fancy words.
over the southern Indian Ocean. The lack of official information in the days immediately after the disappearance prompted fierce criticism from the Chinese public, particularly from relatives of the passengers, as most people on board Flight 370 were of Chinese origin. Several pieces of debris washed ashore in the western Indian Ocean during 2015 and 2016. many of these were confirmed to have originated from Flight 370, which, if you're not familiar, there's serial numbers written on like the inside of some of these pieces, so they date that. After a 3-year search across 120,000 square kilometers of the ocean floor failed to locate the aircraft, the Joint Agency Coordination Center heading the operation suspended their activities in January 2017. And they still have not found it.
No, and the only thing I can think of where it would be is if it did crash into the ocean and just nobody got to it in time. The ocean is deep. We've only explored 5% of it. It could still be somewhere deep in the ocean. That is the only place I can think it would be.
Unless because again, I have some speculated cases of disappearance. Because again, there's the conspiracy side of things saying that maybe they got the radar wrong. It could have flown as far north as Kazakhstan. It flew into India. North Korea shot it down. The U.S. shot it down. Malaysia shot it down. You can fill in a million blanks. There was a tabloid magazine where the cover claimed it was on the moon. That's tabloids for you.
I think also out of all the people that were on the plane, I think there was about 14, 15 Americans that were on there.
4 Americans, I think.
I thought it was higher.
But
than that.
Again, there were Americans, and I think there was a Canadian or two on the flight too, which is
so it wasn't just Malaysia who lost people that day.
No, several countries lost people. But here's some speculated causes of the disappearance: a murder-suicide by the pilot. Malaysian police searched the homes of the pilots and seized financial records for all 12 crew members. The preliminary report issued by Malaysia in March 2015 stated that there was no evidence of recent or imminent significant financial transactions carried out. So basically, there was no big purchases, and that the analysis of the behavior of the pilots on CCTV footage showed no significant behavioral changes. However, U.S. officials believe the most likely explanation to be that someone in the cockpit of Flight 370 reprogrammed the aircraft's autopilot to travel south across the Indian Ocean. Media reports claim that Malaysian police had identified Captain Zahari, he was the captain of the flight, as the prime suspect. If human intervention were eventually proven to be the cause of Flight 370's disappearance. In 2020, Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister of Australia when the plane disappeared, he disclosed in a Sky News interview, quote, "My very clear understanding from the top levels of the Malaysian government is that from very, very early on, they thought it was a murder-suicide by the pilot." The cargo. Flight 370 was carrying 23,000 pounds of cargo. It was noted that there were 487 pounds of lithium-ion batteries on board. The lithium-ion batteries were contained in a 5,000-pound box that was being shipped from Motorola in Malaysia to China. They were packaged in accordance with flying guidelines, but did not go through any additional inspections at Kuala Lumpur Airport before being loaded on the plane. Lithium-ion batteries can cause intense fires if they overheat and ignite, which has occurred on other flights and has led to strict regulations on transport aircraft. Mm-hmm. The third one, and the one that I believe to be probably the most believable, okay? An analysis comparing the evidence available for Flight 370 concluded that an unresponsive crew or hypoxia event best fit the available evidence for the 5-hour period of the flight as it traveled south over the Indian Ocean without communication or significant deviations in its track, likely on autopilot. No consensus exists amongst investigators on the unresponsive crew or hypoxia theory. If no control inputs were made following the flameout and the disengagement of the autopilot, the aircraft would have likely entered a spiral dive and entered the ocean within 37 kilometers of the flameout and disengagement of the autopilot. Well, because it was either that or the plane would have had fuel exhaustion and it would have just glided on its own into the ocean, which probably would have made I think that would make the rubble easier, or an intact plane, because it would sort of glide into it, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it would make sense if it was to just nosedive into the ocean.
Then at least it makes sense why there's pieces there.
It would plummet deeper and it would start to implode from the water weight. But
which would make sense of why there's pieces that have been found. But if it was gentle.
Well, there's something else here. It says the analysis of the flaperon, which was a part of the wing that was discovered in the wreckage, recovered in 2015. It showed that the landing flaps were not extended. supporting the spiral dive at high speed theory. In May 2018, it was asserted that the flight was not in control when it crashed. Its spokesperson added, "We have quite a bit of data to tell us that the aircraft, if it was being controlled at the end, it wasn't being very successfully controlled." Mm-hmm. So meaning that the crew could have been incapacitated.
It's still scary. Because how does that many people on a plane disappear? That plane was huge.
It was a Boeing 727, I think.
Yeah, like that plane was huge.
It was a big plane.
How has it not been found? That's the question.
And again, we're not ever going to have any answers on why this even happened unless they find the black box recording, which is on the plane.
See, I wonder. I know a lot of people don't usually survive plane crashes, but if it hit the water, I just wonder if maybe since it hit nose first, if somebody in the back of the plane could have survived by chance, and why wouldn't they try and swim up to the shore? Like, I'm curious. Like, I don't know if that's probable or possible, but what if somebody did survive?
Well, it would be hard to see because, if you're entering at a nosedive, you're traveling incredibly quickly.
Yes.
So, I mean, because that's tens of thousands or probably hundreds of thousands of pounds just going. So I think you could probably be crushed by it. And then even if, let's say, you managed to get out of the plane, survive the crash, you're now stranded in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
True. But the only other thing I could think of is maybe, this is just me thinking randomly, but what if someone did survive, traveled to the shore, and just restarted a life there and never said anything about what happened? I don't know. It could be fun.
Would make for a great TV show.
There is a TV show, actually, about Flight 370, where they find it years later. Like, they made a TV show where it went missing, and then years later, these people, it shows back up, and they arrive into a world that's way different than they left. I don't know. I want to watch it because it seems interesting. But it's obviously, not a real.
Right. Okay. So I think we've kind of gotten through the big ones that we wanted to talk about. I think these next few ones are going to be a little more bullet point, a little more shorter. Some food for thought.
Okay, I'll do my last one, which is an urban legend from here in Canada, because we got to do something Canadian. And it's about the Wendigo. Google it. I want you to see it.
The Wendigo?
The Wendigo. Wendigo. So the Wendigo is an urban legend. Look at the pictures of it. The Wendigo is an urban legend from Fort Kent, Alberta. It is known as a mysterious predator, a mysterious predator that roams the forest, essentially. It is advised that when you live around these areas, you do not let your children out without supervision. There have been cases of mutilated horses and disemboweled cows left on people's yards. Like, if you have a farm out there, there have been reports of people's animals being killed. And not in a normal way. Like, mutilated, like really grossly mutilated. There's been unearthly howls that have been reported from around there. A man heard it and went out with a shotgun, prepared to kill whatever it was. And he ended up not being able to and reported a dark figure with glowing eyes just in the distance.
It was me.
It's said to be about 15 feet tall.
That's not me.
That's huge.
Well, again, for reference, I'm 6'4". That would be two of me
plus a little bit.
Plus you.
Yeah. It is.
I called you 3 feet tall.
It was first appeared in 1636.
Oh, so this goes back.
First reported case ever.
Well, because that's interesting. Because what I read here, just from the article on Wikipedia, it says it originated from Algonquin folklore. Yes. So it's an indigenous,
murder and cannibalism cases around the area have been blamed on this spirit, predator, whatever you want to call it. In indigenous folklore, it is a spirit that enters people by biting them or through a dream. And basically, this thing is low-key terrifying. Colin looked at a picture of it. It's like fangs, and bro's got antlers sometimes, like a deer. It's not always the exact same thing for everybody, but it is warned that if you live in the Fort Fort Kent area not to leave your children out on their own without supervision, because the Wendigo will get your children.
I don't know if you can see that.
You won't be able to insert Wendigo picture here. That's for you.
Basically, it's
like a giant scary deer.
It's like a deer that like walks on two legs. Is like kind of very gaunt and thin, kind of like me. And it walks upright on two legs, and it almost looks like a werewolf
mixed with a deer. That's very slender
and
a little
bit
of a demon.
And a little bit of a demon that's supposedly 15 feet tall.
Post-production, we'll put a picture in right here for you to kind of see a basic Wendigo. But
Kenzie is as scary as a Wendigo.
Hey, but think about it being 15 feet tall. That is terrifying.
That
thing is a tower.
Well, I mean, you think of how tall I am.
That's almost the size of this building, probably.
It's probably taller than that, actually.
Yeah, that's crazy. But that's So in Fort Kent, you're not supposed to leave your children out alone.
Well,
this thing will snatch
maybe
your kids.
next year we'll take a road trip to Fort Kent.
Yeah, I just want to know. I just want to know if it's all like folklore, if it's all fake, or if like people are actually hearing stuff, or if they're hearing like wolves howling, or if they're hearing I just want to know if it's real.
We'll never know. Okay, I'm gonna talk about one. This is a unexplained mystery, but this is one that has been solved because it just recently has been solved.
Interesting.
When I first heard about this, it was only a couple years before it had became solved. So we'll just as a little parenthesis, but this is the case of Benjamin Kyle.
I have no idea. Wow, okay.
On August 31st, 2004, at 5 a.m., a Burger King employee in Richmond...
Burger King.
You ruined the moment.
Sorry, guys. He lost me at Burger King employee. Oh, anyway.
I need to mute your microphone here. Okay. A Burger King employee in Richmond Hill, Georgia, found a man unconscious.
Sorry.
What's gotten into you? This is insane. Okay. I'm just going to start from the beginning. On August 31st, 2004, at 5 a.m., a Burger King employee in Richmond Hill, Georgia, found a man unconscious, naked, and sunburned behind the dumpster of the restaurant.
Yummy.
He had...
Go ahead. Sorry.
He had 3 impressions in his skull that appeared to have been caused by blunt force trauma.
Ew.
And he also had red ant bites on his body.
Ew.
After discovering him, the employees called the emergency services, and EMS took him to St. Joseph's Hospital in Savannah, Georgia. He had no identity document and was recorded in hospital records as Burger King Doe.
Burger King Doe.
After the incident, no criminal investigation was opened by Richmond Hill police, as there were no reports of stolen vehicles in the area, and local restaurants and hotels did not encounter any individuals matching the man's description. The man eventually said that he remembered that his name was Benjamin, spelt with 2 A's.
Oh, he survived?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, he was unconscious, so this is when he woke up.
Oh.
But he said he could not recall his last name. He came up with the surname Kyle from his police and hospital placeholder name. Upon seeing himself for the first time in the mirror, Kyle realized he was around 20 years older than he thought he was.
Whoa.
This man could not remember anything about himself, his identity, anything.
Interesting.
Kyle believed he was passing through Richmond Hill on either U.S. Route 17 or Interstate 95 in late August 2004. He may also have been on the road because of Hurricane Charlie, which had hit earlier that month. After being released from the hospital, Kyle spent several years between the Grace House Men's Shelter and hospitals. He was diagnosed with dissociative amnesia in 2007 in Atlanta. As of January 2015, he lived in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, in a 5-by-8 foot air-conditioned shack provided by a benefactor. The reason why he's homeless is because he can't remember anything about himself. He can't remember his social security number, so he can't apply for anything. A job, housing, a car, nothing. And he was never granted a new one. And there were charities. He was on an episode of Dr. Phil.
Did anybody ever report somebody that looked like him missing? Like, he had to have a family somewhere.
It doesn't appear to be. It'll make a little more sense as it goes on here. Okay. For many years after his amnesia, Kyle was homeless and had been unable to obtain employment as he could not remember his full Social Security number.
I don't remember mine. That's why I have to carry it. I have to bring it with me when I need it. So
Kyle was able to remember that he was born 10 years before Michael Jackson and on the same day, giving him a possible birth date of August 29th, 1948. Genetic testing suggested that he may have had the surname Powell or Davidson, or had relatives with these names. Through hypnosis, he recalled a partial Social Security number. He was basically able to identify 4 of the possible numbers. And the numbers that basically he did come up with in the order they were consistent with numbers assigned in Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana during the 1960s. Okay. So things are starting to piece together a little bit. More specific memories placed him in Indianapolis between at least 1954 and 1963. But Kyle had nearly no memory of his life after the 1980s, including how he ended up in Georgia. One event he does remember is reading about the September 11th attacks. When asked by a doctor to recall the presidents of the United States, he only recalled those from the 20th century. Many of his memories he cannot describe in words and were at the tip of his tongue. But on November 21st, 2016, Benjamin Kyle's true identity was revealed to be William Burgess Powell. And he was indeed born on August 29th, 1948 in Lafayette, Indiana, and was raised there. In 1976, he had cut ties with his family and abandoned his possessions, including his car and the trailer home where he had been living. His family filed a missing persons report at the time, and police found that he had moved to Boulder, Colorado on a whim with a coworker. His birthday turned out to be one of the details about his previous life that he remembered correctly. A reporter found some Social Security records of him working in various jobs until 1983, after which no records could be found for the remaining period for more than 20 years before his discovery in 2004. So they found out this guy's identity, and there's a somewhat happy conclusion to all of this, but there's so many questions of, like, pretty much from the early 80s to 2004, this guy just disappeared.
How did he get there?
And why was he, again, naked, had impressions on his skull, red ant bites all over his body, sunburnt.
Is maybe a assault or like a kidnapping scenario where he was taken, and people didn't really realize that he was missing because, like you said, his family didn't really know. And what happens with that coworker? Well, like, again, that coworker has to know something about what happened.
Well, but that was like 20 years before.
But he was living in like Colorado or whatever it was with this coworker.
Well, but it doesn't say for how long he was living there. So.
Well, they should ask the coworker that how long they had been living there, because maybe the coworker knows what happened.
Perhaps.
Or maybe the coworker doesn't care and bro got abducted and
or maybe
nobody cared.
Or maybe the coworker passed away or they could not track him down. So, yeah, it's one that got solved, has a happy ending, but
kind of solved. I would say half solved.
Too many things that don't add up.
Because they never solved how he ended up there and how he got what he did.
The happy side is that he was able to get a Social Security number. He's able to get out of homelessness and poverty and whatnot. But again, you might have recalled about Benjamin Kyle because, again, he was on an episode of Dr. Phil titled "Who Am I?" Who am I?
No idea.
You don't know who I am.
Anyway, I find that interesting.
We've definitely covered. I'm going to cover a quick one. I have a little bullet point here.
Real quick, Colin.
Real quick. Really quick notes here. So this is called the Knights of the Gold Circle. The Knights of the Gold Circle.
Sounds somewhat familiar.
The Knights of the Gold Circle, or the KGC, were a group of wealthy Southern aristocrats who formed a secret society a few years before the American Civil War. The members of this group defended their way of life, along with their plans to conquer parts of Latin America in order to expand their influence and continue the slave trade without interference from the North. Not too much is known about the intricacies of the group, but there were plenty of famous members. The infamous American outlaw Jesse James was a supposed member of the KGC, along with the assassin of Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth. But there are some who think that the KGC could have directly planned the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, while there are others who think Booth acted alone. The group disappeared in the decades following the end of the American Civil War and have never entered the public eye again. Theories swirl about whether or not the group still exists in secret. Other rumors claim that the group has stashed their immense wealth someplace across the United States. No one has ever found this treasure aside from a handful of gold coins in 2014, but that have not been yet confirmed to be authentic.
You know, that kind of reminds me of just a smaller version of the Illuminati.
I was going to say, it sounds very Illuminati, doesn't it?
We should do an episode on the Illuminati.
We could dedicate like 5 episodes to the Illuminati.
Just the Illuminati. Like, because I actually did a research paper when I was in high school.
I'm part of the Illuminati.
I know you are. Sorry, I did a research paper on the Illuminati. I'm going to see if I can try and find it. Sure. And we can read through my research. If I can't, I kind of know what I wrote about. Just basically the origins and like... But the Illuminati itself is a huge conspiracy theory. There's theories about Beyonce being in it, Jay-Z.
Every major celebrity, LeBron James,
P. Diddy,
Mark Zuckerberg.
Everything that P. Diddy has done, people have connected to the Illuminati.
This is where we tell you guys that because how famous we are actually a part of the Illuminati. If you want to take the shot, I have the eye right in the middle of the triangle, right? This is how you know I'm secretly...
If you know, you know.
I'm secret. If you know, you know. We are secretly a part of the secret society. We live amongst you.
It's interesting how it actually started, and we don't have enough time to get into it.
It was a genuine group that was started, but then it supposedly faded away and stopped. But some people think it still exists, and that the upper crust of society all contribute to it.
You know, if we're being honest, it probably exists. Something like that probably exists.
But it's probably some like guys in their basement just being like, "So what do we talk about today?"
No, I think that
let's have some tea and orange juice and then just talk about how we can rig the world.
I do think that something goes on because there's no way the things in the world just happen like that.
Well, I think things go on behind the scene, but to call it the Illuminati, I think, or that it's a secret society is dumb. Like when, for example,
things happen behind the scenes, and
the P. Diddy case. That's a lot of background bad stuff that happened in the shadows, but to claim that's Illuminati, because I think people come up with this because so many rich people, billionaires, celebrities, they're all intertwined. They all have their connections because they all mingle in the same social class.
We're gonna have to do another episode because I have a conspiracy for you.
Casey Chronicles Illuminati coming soon.
Because I do
find that research paper.
I will try my best. I do have a conspiracy to do with the Illuminati, but mostly Beyonce. It's part of it. And P. Diddy's involvement.
Is she single? Damn it, I ruined my joke. Is she secretly not one of the single ladies? Put your hands up.
Anyway, that will be... I need to talk about it, and I think
Stay tuned. We might have a kind of a follow-up episode where we might talk about the Illuminati.
And
but
just P. Diddy and all that stuff going on.
I don't want to talk about P. Diddy.
I will say thank goodness that P. Diddy is not allowed to get out on bail, so he is stuck in jail until his trial in May.
Well, that guy's probably going to be stuck there for the rest of his life because it is so damning, but that's all I'm going to say.
But if you know the P. Diddy case, you know. So
and if you don't know and don't want to know, don't go there. It's disturbing.
But there are a lot of theories out there. If you are curious about what I'm talking about, you can always find them on the internet. Thank you guys for joining us.
But we're unfortunately out of time. That was a great episode. I enjoyed that. That was fantastic. So stay tuned for a potential Illuminati episode
I think that could be fun just to talk about. There's so many conspiracies around it.
Absolutely.
So I think that we could flesh it out, what we think is real, what we think is not, what we think is, who we think's in it, you know, kind of make our own version of the Illuminati on here.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fun. I also was going to bring up we need to do another crime episode.
Yes,
because that's going to come up. That's an idea we got to do soon. Because I have more cases that I would love to talk about.
Of course you do.
I always have cases. Also, we should definitely do a post-election debriefing on Casey Chronicles.
Oh boy.
Even if it's only half an hour, I think we need to talk about it.
Kill my brain. But more importantly, after Remembrance Day, stay tuned for our saga of Christmas episodes, winter episodes. We have been brainstorming. We have probably a
good chunk.
Similar to what we did with Halloween, where we did 3 episodes. You could probably expect another kind of 3 to 4 part Christmas saga.
I do think that right after Remembrance Day, we're going to start pushing to make that content, because then we can make even more. Like if we're doing once a week, we could
We are going to make it so that
we're going to push.
It's going to be like the 12 days of Christmas, but the 12 days of Casey Chronicles.
Casey Chronicles miss.
Casey Chronicles miss.
Ow, my ribs.
it was the concept of the Casey Chronicles miss was so mind breaking. It hurt her. Are you okay? We're gonna cut off this episode again. It's been a very busy couple of days, and it's been a very busy day, and so we're in so many moods, and we're in very silly states of mind. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for Christmas episodes and all that coming your way very soon. But from Kenzie and Colin, thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.